I know you're in America to talk to your allies about things like this, sending battle tanks. What is their answer, and why is there no decision?
Anne-Marie, we have been talking about the need to provide Ukraine with tanks for quite some time now. And as our president said it many times, as our Minister of Defense has said it many times, there are no rational reasons, it would seem, why Ukraine is still not provided with the heavy tanks. We are at a stage of the warfare in which missile terror continues, in which Russians continue to pulverize our cities. So time, like our president, Mr. Zelensky, said, is not on our side, and time is used by Russia as a weapon. And just to give you an illustration, this was Ramstein meeting number 8, but we've already had 12 massive missile strikes on Ukraine. Now that means and illustrates that we are very grateful for all the support that we receive from our Western allies. But it seems like we're always a couple of steps behind, and we should be a couple of steps ahead, because every day results in more destruction, every day results in more civilian casualties, and, you know, there is no excuse to procrastinate. We have shown, the Ukrainian army has shown it many times, that we can defeat the enemy on the battlefield. Moreover, in the last 6 months, the enemy has not had any considerable military success on the battlefield. Now, we can be even more efficient, we can be even more successful with the use of these weapons that we are requesting. And tanks, of course, are one of the top priorities. Now, the decision has not been reached today at Ramstein, but we will not stop at advocating and further talking to our partners about providing Ukraine with tanks, because there is a very deep understanding that Ukraine is now fighting not just for our territory, not just for our people. We are essentially defending an eastern flank of NATO. All our Western neighboring countries, the Baltic states, Poland, they all have a very good understanding of the real threat of Russian army advancing further west. This is why I believe, and this is how it was in the past, with Patriots, HIMARSes. First, it was difficult to take the decision, then it was taken by our allies, and now we have them.
Right. So, Yuri, what you're saying is that at some point you do believe, whether it's Leopards or Abrams, they're coming to Ukraine. There's also New York Times reporting that U.S. officials are potentially warming up to the idea that Ukraine should have the power to strike Crimea. This is something new. Is that your understanding?
We have said it many times that our goal is the restoration of territorial integrity of Ukraine within the internationally recognized borders. And that, of course, includes Crimea. Now, and we have been asking our allies to provide, especially the United States, we have been asking to get the longer range missiles like ATACMS missiles, because they will, of course, enable our army to be even more efficient. It doesn't mean to say that we are ready to start militarily attacking Crimea tomorrow, no. But being provided with these weapons will ensure that our army is capable of targeting logistical hubs, supply lines of the enemy, and this will, of course, make it impossible for them to fight on. This will force them to retreat, which is exactly what has happened before in places like Kharkiv and most recently in Kherson.
Yuri, I want to be specific about these tanks because we're talking about a lot of different hardware. We were just showing our viewers a little bit of a menu of the various tanks that we're discussing here. As opposed to Leopard tanks that are made in Germany, some lawmakers here in the United States, including Senator Lindsey Graham, are urging the U.S., the Biden administration, to send American Abrams tanks to, quote, open the floodgates and compel Germany to send their own. But do you actually want Abrams tanks that run on a jet engine and get 3 gallons of gas per mile? We understand they also require an enormous amount of training. Would those help you?
Well, first of all, I would like to say that countries like, as you know, the United Kingdom has already made that decision. They've already overcome that mental block, and they will provide Ukraine with 14 within a squadron of their Challenger 2 tanks. So that's a sign of leadership. Of course, we would hope that the US will also show their leadership in providing Ukraine with tanks, and they will make that decision. Now, of course, there are nuances about the logistics, about the maintenance of different types of tanks. But look, we have shown in the past. For example, when the decision was made by our allies to start providing Ukraine with Western artillery, we received different kinds of artillery. You know, we had M777s from the US, we had Caesars from our European allies. So in essence, we've shown that it is possible to use different types of Western weapons as long as they are, you know, put to a good use. So there are nuances, but of course, if Ukraine gets Abrams tanks from the US, this of course will set an example for all other countries, and Germany is very explicit about that, for example.
So that sounds like a yes. General Mark Milley, the chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, said today at Ramstein that NATO has never been more unified. In light of Germany's hesitation, do you agree?
Well, we believe that indeed during this war, you know, and the Ramstein meeting is proof of that. There is not one NATO country which is not supporting Ukraine. Everybody is in full understanding of, you know, what kind of threat we're facing. And we are confident that the hesitation which is still taking place with regards to providing Ukraine with certain types of weapons will be overcome with time. Because I would like to just stress that this is exactly how it worked with, for example, the HIMARS MLRS systems. This was the case with, for example, Patriot air defense systems and other types of modern Western air defense systems. So I would just like to repeat that let's be one step ahead of the enemy, not one step behind.
So what's the timeline, Yuri? You seem very confident that you're going to get the tanks. When do you expect this hesitation, as you call it, to wrap up?
It's very difficult to predict exactly when that decision will be taken. I can just assure you that we will not stop talking to our partners. Our Minister of Defense, Mr. Alexei Reznikov, will continue to discuss this with his counterparties on a daily basis. As you have noticed, our President, Mr. Zelensky, he keeps stressing the need in tanks every day. So we hope that, you know, we will be able to break this glass ceiling and get the tanks soon. Because look, for us, every day of procrastination results, like I said before, in deaths and destruction, and we must stop this.
When it comes to Germany and their defense minister, he's been in the job for 72 hours. Boris Pistorius, he's never really had any military background. Are you confident this is an individual your boss, the Ukraine defense minister, can work with?
Look, of course, we never discuss the internal appointments of our allies. What we can go by is, even if we look at the way the Germany's military support of Ukraine evolved, it is quite impressive. So at first, Germany was very hesitant to provide any. Now we are getting from them Gepard systems, for example, lots of different other types of military assistance. So, you know, we just need to keep talking, and I think it will happen.
President Zelensky, Yuri, told the Economic Forum in Davos this week, he was speaking remotely, that the war will be won in the Donbass. Is that how you force Russia to the negotiating table, or do you see that in lieu of the negotiating table?
By now, we understand one thing very clearly, that this war will have to be won on the battlefield. And of course, any war in the history of mankind ends in negotiations. But we have been very explicit about our preconditions for any negotiating process. And this, of course, first and foremost means the complete withdrawal of Russian troops. Right now, the epicenter of the war is in Donbass. We know that Russians are amassing their army in Donbass. We know that they are planning new waves of mobilization. We know that from day one of this aggression, gaining full control of Donbass area, Donbass region, was one of their top military priorities. They have not achieved that goal, and they will never achieve that goal, because we are determined to continue to push, and I just have to repeat that we need more weapons to do it. Look, we are not asking our Western allies to fight this war for us, even though it is a war for our common shared values, for our common freedom. What we are saying, and this is something that the Minister of Defense of Ukraine repeats very often, give us the tools and we will finish the job. This is such a simple formula to understand. Look, tanks. One thing is to use those tanks in Ukraine now when it is still possible, but if the allies don't give us those tanks, there could be a day when they will have to use them themselves, because I will repeat, Russia has no intention to stop in Ukraine. Russia's plan is to reverse history to the level of at least like their leader has said 1997, and this was when countries like Poland, Hungary, the Baltic states, Romania, they were not members of NATO alliance. So we know very well what kind of threat we are faced with, and we are sure that our allies understand as well that it is better for all of us to end this in Ukraine, and we can do it. We have shown that we can do it. Our allies have shown that they are capable of making these important decisions, and it's just about time we get on with it and finish this in 2023.